Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hey everybody, it's Ashley Cooley, owner of Birth Baby Sleep. Welcome back to the Bringing Up Baby podcast. I'm excited as always to give you this episode because this is a huge topic. It's one that I get asked about quite a bit, is some tips, some tricks, some strategies about traveling with your baby. I had the lovely pleasure of meeting a new friend, and we had a nice long chat about this for the show today, and her name is Amanda Kingsmith. She and her husband have a little one, and they are traveling the world. They actually have their own podcast called the World Wanderers Podcast, so you probably want to go check them out. But she's got so many great tips because she's traveled some really long distances, like really long, and by plane, by car, so different tactics, different strategies, and she's got just a wealth of knowledge in this space. So that's why I wanted to have a chat with her about this. But before we get into that conversation, I just want to have a little plug here and chat for a second about our Bringing Up Baby community membership. This membership is really centered around sleep. Amanda and I are talking a bit about sleep and travel in this episode, but for more details on all of that sleep stuff, on regardless of your baby's age, we get into some toddler stuff as well, but like this is where a lot of our conversations and support is being had when it comes to sleep and babies. So if anybody's looking for extra support and information there, our membership has it all. We've got pre-recorded videos. I go live in the membership once a week. We have our own kind of private message board. It's like a Facebook group, but not on Facebook. And it's just really geared towards not just sleep stuff. We do talk about feedings and milestones and travel and really any topic that is on parents and people's minds. But it is centered around sleep, where that being such a big topic. And it is when it comes to traveling as well. We want the good sleep that happens at home to also happen while we're away. Or if shit hits the fan, we want to know how to get that back. So that's really what our membership is for. And it's really community based. That's why it's called the community membership. So just wanted to mention that if anybody's interested, you can find out more information on our website, birthbabysleep.ca/membership. You can always check us out too on Instagram at birthbabysleep, where I do talk about it there. You can DM, you can email, message us anytime. Anyway, back to this conversation with travel. Here's my conversation with Amanda and all the amazing tidbits she has for when it comes to traveling with your baby. Hello, Amanda. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay, awesome. Well, like I do with all of our guests on our show, I'd love for you to get us started. And if you could share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Amanda Kingsmith. I am originally from like the Calgary, Alberta area. That's where I was born and raised and spent the first, 20 some odd years of my life. And my now husband and I, boyfriend at the time, traveled immediately after we graduated university. I went to the University of Calgary. I have a bachelor's of commerce with a major in marketing. And, that's a lot of complicated words and stuff. And so after that, I just really wanted a break. And so we decided to travel together. That's kind of where my love of travel sort of starts, is a backpacking trip back in 2011 with, now husband. And my journey over the years has been, I guess, a discovery of figuring out a career that works for me while also blending this love of travel that I have and also this love of yoga that came a little bit later. And all that has kind of come together for me, currently joining you from central Mexico, where we now call home. We were completely nomadic for a number of years, I guess 2016 until I don't know if the pandemic counts or not because we couldn't go that many places. We were just kind of stuck rotating between Canada, US, and Mexico. But still we're moving around without a permanent home. But I got pregnant in the spring of 2021 and we were like, okay, we got to pick somewhere to have this baby. And so my daughter was born here in central Mexico about 2 years ago. She's almost 2 at this point. And yeah, we've just been trying to blend our love of travel with now parenting and doing all the things, figuring out how to run a business while being a mother and, all the things that come with that, while also blending our love of travel. So, on top of the podcast that my husband and I do is kind of like a side project called The World Wanders, where we talk about travel, things like we're going to talk about today. My kind of main thing that I do is that I help yoga teachers with their yoga businesses. So that's kind of like
Cool.
my bread and butter, my passion, supporting yoga teachers with their business, teaching the business of yoga, helping people create sustainable businesses. So yeah, there's lots in there.
Lots
It's a
in
high level
there, but
overview.
yeah, but that's great. Thanks for sharing. It just paints a bit of a picture for what we're going to be talking about today, because like you're saying, you're combining your love of travel with yourself and your partner, and now with this little human that you're going to be taking with you, not necessarily leaving home with someone to go do your travels. They're coming too. And I mean, as you've already experienced, I'm sure it's different traveling with somebody else that's very reliant on you and who really loves their routine and things that stay the same. And that's not what's happening with traveling. So why don't we just dive right into it? I love to know, where would you like to start? Your best tips for traveling with a baby. And I'm sure that that depends too. Are we traveling by road, or are we flying? Are we going far? Is this a faraway trip with like a huge time difference, or a short one? So
Hmm.
where should we start with this? Has most of
Yeah,
your
because I think
traveling been by flying? Like you're going far places?
yeah, that's a good question. So we actually did a pretty epic road trip from Mexico to Canada last summer. So
Wow.
my daughter was about like 6 months. We did fly. My daughter and I flew. It was her first flight from Texas to Montana. So we skipped a good chunk of the US, and my husband did like 2 full days of driving by himself. But we did drive her through a good chunk of Mexico, and then from Montana through to Alberta, which is a good 9 hours. So we've done lots of road trips with her as well. We've driven from where we live to Puerto Vallarta, which is a good 9 hours there and back. And so we could
Wow.
certainly talk about that. But I think we also need to, I think a huge part of this is like the age of your child. And I feel like this has been one
Yeah.
thing that we've really recognized, is that we didn't travel like a ton outside of that big trip that I'm talking about, when in her first, like, I guess 11 months, like we basically just kind of did some short trips here, like little road trips, getting her used to like driving in the car seat and being in the car for longer periods of time, figuring out how that worked. And then she was, I guess, like almost 5 months when she took that first flight. Um, and then when she was 1, we were like, well, we only have a year left before we have to pay for a seat. So, like, we got to
Mm.
get going. And this year, so 2023, we've done a number of trips. We took her to like Panama and Colombia when she was about 11 months. We did that road trip when she was a year to Puerto Vallarta. We did a month in Japan, which was like definitely our biggest trip, like 15
Wow.
hours on a plane with a
Wow.
14-month-olds. We did Canada for 5 weeks when she was a year and a half, and then we just got back from Argentina, which it like doesn't seem that far, but it's a 3-hour time difference from Central Time, and it's like 9 hours on a plane, or like 8.5 hours or something on a plane from
Oh,
Mexico
wow.
to get to Buenos Aires. So, um, yeah, lots of different things happening at each stage, and I feel like every time I'm like, okay, we've like mastered this phase of travel, it's like, okay, well, she's a totally different little human now. Like, I think planning even for this trip to Argentina with a long haul flight, one was during the day, one was overnight, felt so
Mm.
different from planning Japan, because she wasn't walking when we went to Japan. And now she's like a little runner, right? So it's like
Mm.
she's a very different baby. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
we can start from like how to travel when you've got like a little one. Like, they're not really
Yes. Yeah.
sitting, they're not super like mobile, they're still like they're not eating food, so you don't have to pack snacks, stuff like that. Because I feel like
Yeah.
there's just these like huge differences between if you're traveling with like a 3-month old, or if you're traveling with like a 22-month old like I have.
100%. Yeah. So let's start with the really young ones, I guess, as young as we. So even like the first 6 months, the first year, that if they're not already mobile, I guess we could even go there. Questions that I get coming up in our membership and just from followers and people are like, what are the best toys to bring? Or are there toys? Are there particular things that you can bring to help distract your little one? Again, very different if they're like 6 weeks versus 6 months. You don't necessarily need a toy at that 6 week mark. So are there any particular things or products that you have that are like, we bring this with us all the time, or just different activities, or even time of day of if you can plan your travel like that? So yeah, what kind of suggestions do you have for the really little ones?
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like when they're like really little, they're so easy to like distract by just like everyday things. Like your jacket, the button on your jacket can be interesting when you've got a kid that's
Totally.
kind of like under 6 months, under a year. So I feel like you don't have to have a lot of toys, but I feel like there's a couple key pieces that you need to bring as like a parent. So I feel like one of them is having like a good baby carrier. I think being able to be hands free is like super key when your kid can't like sit on their own, when they can't stand on their own. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's so many moving pieces with like even, putting your diaper bag up above in the seat, or up above in the like luggage bin on the plane. It's like being able to just do that hands free is so helpful. So I think having a great baby carrier, I think making sure you've got something for your baby to like suck on is really helpful. So my daughter was exclusively breastfed for until she started solids. So breastfeeding was our go-to, but if your child is like bottle fed, then definitely making sure you've got bottles for them ready to go for when you take off and when you land. And security is like actually really great at airports. Like if you need formula, if you need water, if you want to take milk because they take a bottle and you pump and stuff, you can take all that stuff through security, which is amazing. I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, you know,
Right, it's a
airports can be
liquid,
really
so technically we're not
yeah.
allowed to bring that on. Yeah.
Yeah, but they make a lot of exceptions for parents. I feel like being a parent in the airport is like the biggest, like you get like bonuses or like, oh,
It's like a
let's just wave you to the
celebrity. Yeah.
front. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like, oh, family line, go to the front here. Oh, you have a little one. Just come. I'll check you in at this like first class,
Yeah. Yeah.
ticket counter, even though you're not first class and stuff. People have always been very kind for us. And that's been across multiple cities, multiple countries, multiple airlines. We've always experienced that.
Cool.
Um, I think the other thing that I would suggest, so having something to suck on, so bottle, nipple, soother. My daughter takes a soother as well, so having a soother in those early days was really helpful. I think if your child is kind of busy, then I feel like having something for their hands can be really nice. Like if they have like a lovey that they really like, or they've got even like a toy that they can shake that makes noise. I feel like just something that's like they can hold on to, that can kind of distract them from like just the chaos of the environment of a plane can be really helpful when they're
Mm-hmm.
really small. And then the other thing I would say is like easily accessible extra outfits, diapers, wipes, because blowouts are like super common on planes when babies are really small. We fortunately
Mm-hmm.
never had like any extreme incidents, but I swear to God, my daughter always has a diaper leak when we're like at the airport. So we always travel with like, even now as she's like bigger, we always
uh,
travel with extra outfits just because it's like nothing worse than like your child has like pooped themselves and it smells bad and it's going to get all over you and you maybe don't have extra outfits for yourself and you're like, oh my God, what am I supposed to
and you
do?
have to hold them for
And
8 more hours.
yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's so helpful to have that just like in a Ziploc, because then you can put dirty clothes in the Ziploc after too, so they don't stink up everything. Really easily accessible. So just put it in like whatever bag's going to go under the seat in front of you, or like have the extra like little onesie with diapers, wipes, and like maybe a couple of like your key toys, your soother that you just like put kind of in the pocket in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. I found with toys, like even at this age, my daughter tends to be like, for the first little bit at least, she's always really fascinated about like looking out the window or playing with like the safety card or like the barf bag. Like she
Right.
loves that stuff. So we don't usually introduce toys for her until she seems to be bored of that stuff. Cause I
Smart.
feel like it's
Yeah.
like you only have so many toys with you. So you
Yeah.
got to be kind of smart of like how you introduce them. So we almost always like don't start with a toy. We just let her kind of like explore her area. And for us, window seats have been really great. I mean, one, when they're small, it's great for like the privacy of breastfeeding. Once they start moving, it's nice because they don't like, I guess, know the option of being able to crawl or like walk up and down the aisle as much because they're more confined. I mean, every
Good
kid's
point.
different. Like some kids might just be like trying to crawl across like the neighbors beside you, which is totally awkward. My daughter's not that child. So I feel like just being able to distract her with the window has always been like, she'll watch like the people refuel the plane or load the baggage on, like for as long as it's happening. And then she loves
Mm-hmm.
watching like take off and looking at the city we're flying over and stuff. So, um, well, we always travel with toys. I feel like honestly, just like the airplane itself has been like very stimulating and interesting. But I will
Mm-hmm.
say, like, a key toy that we bought that you can get on Amazon that's really affordable. And I feel like you see these on like all the mommy blogs of people who travel is those
Mm-hmm.
like sticky toys that stick to the window and then they can
The
spin them.
suction. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
suction ones. Those
That
are
makes sense.
awesome. And we've had those for like probably a year now, and they've worked through so many phases. Like I feel like they're kind of like a probably not an evergreen toy. Like she's obviously going to like phase out of them at some point, but you
Mm-hmm.
can spin it
Mm-hmm.
when they're really little to kind of like distract them if they're crying or their ears are bothering them or they're fussy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, as they're bigger, they can do it themselves. And now she's like big enough that she likes to take it off and put it on and spin it and like take it off and put it on and spin it. You know, toddlers just do the same loop for like 10 minutes. And you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
also do it
Yeah.
on the like table tray in front of you too, if like the
Right. If
window
you
is
don't
not
have the window
accessible or you
seat.
don't. Yeah, exactly. So that can be
Perfect.
really great. For time of day when it comes to flights, like I think if you can time like a shorter flight around your child's nap schedule so that they will sleep on the plane, obviously that's super helpful. But I think that can be really hard, especially if you're planning in advance. I will say that as much as red eye flights suck for long haul, like they're just, you wake up feeling terrible, they are helpful with a child because your baby
They're more likely to
most likely
sleep.
will sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so for Japan, I think we left Mexico City at like it was after midnight. So my daughter had already been sleeping when we were in the airport. And then she woke up because we had to take her out of her stroller to pack the stroller up to board. And so then she kind of like played around for a little bit as we did boarding and we did, you know, safety debriefing and takeoff. And as soon as we were in the sky, she was asleep again and she slept her whole, like her pretty much her normal schedule. So she slept the first probably 7 hours of the flight, which was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Woke up, had
Mm-hmm.
breakfast, played a little bit, then went back down for her kind of like regular nap schedule. So I think we got like of a 15-hour flight, probably close to 10 hours of sleep, which is like a blessing.
Ooh,
Godsend.
nice
Like,
work. Nice work.
yeah.
Yes. And I think maybe you can agree that, and maybe you've found yourself in these situations as somebody who does travel and has quite a plan in their head of like, okay, this is how ideally this could work out. Even when we sometimes do all the quote unquote right things, it's a travel day and sleep might not happen just as we planned it, or this is their normal nap time. We planned the flight to be around this time, but here we are, there's too many distractions and we can't actually do it. So there's going to be an element of that. It's not necessarily going to be perfect, but these are like helping you set up the scene to have that ideal scenario be there, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. And I think kids really like vibe off of our energy. So I think when you have a big travel day,
Totally.
it's really important to just kind of let go of like control what you can, but then plan what you can, but let go of what you can't control. And at the end of the day, you can't control how your child sleeps. So I feel like while I like routine, we have pretty like regular naps and bedtime. It's like if we have a travel day and she falls asleep on the way to the airport, it's like, great, we got 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Take
she'll
it.
sleep again when she's tired. Like we just kind of let
Yeah.
her like run the show and do her thing and just trust that she's, you know, gonna sleep when she's tired and she's gonna not sleep when she's not, and make sure we have activities and stuff planned for,
Mm.
you know, when she is awake.
Yeah.
Because when we flew to
Yeah.
Argentina, so she was almost 21 months old and our flight there was during the day. So the only like I guess great thing about it was that we got up at like 3:30 in the morning. So she was pretty tired like pretty quick because that's like 4 hours earlier than she would normally get up. So she was low on sleep. So she did sleep a little bit more than she would have during a normal day, but
Mm-hmm.
we had like a layover from our city to Mexico City. We had a layover in Mexico City. And then when we got on the plane, it was like, you know, she would basically only have maybe 2 to 3 hours of daytime sleep. So I'd kind of planned, hey, we have 8 hours on this long haul flight. I need to have like at least 6 hours of activities kind of ready for
Mm.
her. She slept a little
Mm.
bit more than I'd planned. We did do a little bit of like screen time and stuff like that. Um, But yeah, it's like just totally different than from when she was, 5 months old and she just slept the entire time on the plane or the entire time in the car. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you just plan accordingly and just kind of roll with the punches.
And sometimes that helps when you're at your new location. If there was a travel day, sleep was maybe a little bit off. If you're somewhere new that has quite a bit of a time change, like that could almost help your situation when you're in the new location and how you want things to go while you're away. Which I do want to get
Yeah.
to, like actually, okay, now we're in a new space, and what are your tips on that? But I have a couple of questions. What are your thoughts on boarding the plane on time? Well, not on time, generally speaking, when you're getting on a flight, they request or suggest that anyone traveling with young children, people who need assistance, get boarded first. Are you a board first family, or do you like to wait actually until most people get on and then do your boarding?
Yeah, this is my husband and I have gone back and forth about this or like, should we split up? Like, what's the best thing to do? We've tended to just board first. And I think this is because now that she's like a bit bigger, so now that she can walk and stuff, we don't travel in the airport with her baby carrier. We do still take it with us for trips, but it's not like a key part of the airport. But we do have a travel stroller. So we have the Yo-Yo by Baby Zen, which is great because it folds up and it goes in the overhead compartment. Like it's small
Mm,
enough to do that, which means we don't have to check it under and worry about it getting maybe damaged or thrown around. And then we don't have to wait for it after, which is really nice.
mm-hmm.
But because of that, and because we have a small diaper bag plus our bags, we have a lot of stuff. So while all of that's allowed when you're traveling with a baby, we only have 2 seats between the three of us. So we've tended for that purpose because I feel like they're always short on overhead compartment space. We've tended to
Sure.
board
Yeah.
first because then we know that we can get our
Your
stroller
stuff
up
is
there.
there.
We know, yeah, our stuff is there. And then I feel like it's also nice because it gives my daughter a chance to like orient to the plane before we're like taking off. I've also found,
Mm,
and this is totally a personality thing, she is a little bit shy. So I feel like it's a bit like intimidating for her. And she's like super cute. She's got like, really blonde hair and these like big blue eyes and stuff. So people give her a lot of attention, especially when we're like in Latin America. So people
mm,
are kind of like, hi, 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 like sort of in her face as we're walking. And she gets really like intimidated by
right.
that. So if we can get on the plane as one of the first people and sit down and kind of orientate, I feel like it kind of settles her a little bit. So that's just what we've noticed with her and her personality. I think if we
Yeah.
had like maybe a really busy child that was like wouldn't sit still, just wanted to run up and down the aisles, I think we might do it differently. Or maybe we would split up where like one person goes, gets the overhead compartment space, other one
Mm,
lets the child run. But for
mm,
us and just like the demeanor and nature of our daughter, I feel like it's worked really well to go on first and just get settled, get seated, not have
yeah.
to worry again.
Yeah, such a good point. This is just brings up the point that everybody does something a little bit different, because I know people who swear by going on last, and maybe that is exactly why. It's because they have busy little ones, and keeping
Yeah.
them still while everybody else gets in and boards is kind of a lot. But good point. You want to make sure that your stuff gets in there. And if she's
Mm-hmm.
shy, it's not like I walk onto a plane and now like there's a million eyeballs on her and all that can bring. Okay, really good
Yeah.
point. So depending on the demeanor of your little one and what works for you, that could go either way. What about this is something you mentioned, the takeoff and landing. It's super helpful for little ones, well, for all of us really, but especially babies, to be sucking on something, breastfeeding, bottles, soothers, even your finger during takeoff and landing, because it helps with the whole ear popping and pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You've been on different airlines. So I'm really curious as to, I'm pretty sure that different airlines throughout the world have different suggestions for where is the baby in your lap. When they're not in their own seat, they kind of recommend a particular position. Air Canada, for example, babies in your lap facing outward. Is what they
Yeah.
suggest. Does that change depending on the airline? Do you follow all of those rules, or maybe you do your own thing? What is that like for you guys?
Yeah. Do you know what's so funny about this is Air Canada is the only airline that's ever debriefed us on safety stuff with a toddler. So it's funny that you say that,
Stop,
or safety stuff with
really?
a baby. And we just
Okay.
traveled with her this past summer. So she was like 18 months old. And I was like, we've been like around the world with this kid. Like,
And
I
now
could have
you're
used
telling
it
us
from
how to
like,
set them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
really could have used
interesting.
that debrief with like American Airlines when I flew and she was like 4.5 months old and I was by myself and I'd never taken a child on a plane before. But no, nobody gave me
Mm,
that. So it seems like most airlines don't really care. I'm kind of the mentality that so say when we did take Air Canada, they kind of were like, this is how we suggest you do this. But when we were landing, she was sleeping. I'm not going to wake my baby up as we're like landing the plane or like descending to like get her in the proper like position. Like I had a good grip on her and stuff like that. So I'm
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
the mentality that like do what's best for you, what feels right for you, and just make sure you've got like a good hold on your child. I think the time that you really want to make sure you're awake holding your baby is as you're landing. Like that's the right as the
Mm,
plane like touches the tarmac is when it's like the most kind of jarring.
mm.
So and when they might be like surprised by that experience too. So you want to make sure they're nice and safe. But no, I don't follow any of the stuff because we were going rogue with for so long before Air Canada so
Right.
gracefully was like, here, this is how you should actually hold your baby for takeoff and landing.
Well, but you know what? I found so those were my not only experience, but the majority of my experience flying with my little ones. And they were at the time when I first flew with them. We have 3 kids. They were all at about 5 or 6 weeks of age. And I was like going to visit family in Ontario and stuff. So shorter flight, but they all gave me this breakdown and they're really little babies. And I would have them in a wrap or a carrier and
Mm.
they would too would be sleeping or I might even be breastfeeding. But a lot of times I remember they're being in a wrap, so they're really secure on my body, more secure than if I was holding them and sleeping. And then they were like, you got to take them out. You got to take them out and sit them on your lap like this. And I think just the way my personality is, I'm just like, okay, thank you. Thank you for your advice. Like I appreciate that they have a policy and that's what they need to suggest. But I think we're all going to be better off if I keep this baby sleeping and not screaming.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure this isn't going to land, or this is going to land properly. So, like, odds are, or I guess I take it back to myself as a sleep consultant or a car seat tech. There are certain things that I have to tell you because it's recommended by Health Canada and the World Health Organization and Transport Canada. So, we need to make sure that people know this, but then
Mm-hmm.
there's the practical side of it. Okay, now that you have this information, you make your decision. So I know
Yeah.
people in my circles that if someone tells them that they have a baby fast asleep in their arms or nice and secure, or they're feeding them, and somebody comes up to them and says, you got to seat your baby like this, they'll just, okay, I'll do it. Even despite if that's best for the baby and yourself. So I guess
Yeah.
I just like to bring up that conversation that I don't think you really have to do what they're saying. And I have looked at the flight attendants afterwards, after they came over and said, sit them on your lap like this. And then I just say, okay, great. And then they turn around and go sit down themselves. And then meanwhile, I'm lifting my shirt to go feed them. And then we make
Yeah.
eye contact during takeoff or landing. And they're just like, okay, I get it. Like, I think they get it. So
Yeah,
anyway,
for
but
sure.
I
For
find
sure.
that very interesting that you didn't get that message from anybody else. That's very
No,
interesting to me.
only Air Canada.
Wow. Okay. Well, that settles that.
Yeah, I
um,
was gonna add to once your child becomes like a bit older with takeoff and landing, just for like their ears and stuff like that, having like a water bottle for them or like maybe like a fruit pouch that they can suck on, or even like, a snack that they can be chewing on that distracts them. If they're not still breastfeeding or they don't just take the boob like whenever anymore, or they don't take a soother,
got it.
can be like super, super helpful. So I feel like just once they pass that kind of, I mean, at 6 months they start eating, but I feel like even at 6 months, at least for me, my daughter was still like mostly just breastfeeding. It was like we were mostly playing with food. So it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
when we passed the year mark that I was like, okay, we need to start packing snacks because like she's still breastfeeding, but she's like mostly eating solids. And so for
Mm-hmm.
her, it was like she would much rather like suck on a pouch as we were like taking off our landing than,
Mm.
breastfeed because she's just
Mm-hmm.
not like a little baby anymore.
Not necessarily on demand for your sake. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we get into, because before we wrap this all up, I definitely want to talk about a little bit about, okay, now we're in a new location with our baby, but in the spirit of the traveling, if we're talking about older kiddos, so you talked a little bit about like a toy and things like that. And I think you're kind of referring to this, but maybe there's a little bit more that you have to add. I just want to give you that opportunity of even where to sit on the plane, if you have a busy one versus not, distractions, all that kind of thing. Do you have any other tips for those as the babies and kiddos are getting older? That's maybe a little bit different from when they're younger, any tips you have?
Yeah. Yeah. We like to sit as close to the front of the plane as we can, just so we can like get like on and off quickly. And again, as a family, you usually get to get on quickly, regardless if you want. We like window seats. I feel like that's been kind of our go-to. I feel like the
Mm-hmm.
middle seat's definitely like the toughest because then you've got like a stranger on one side. And if you're traveling by yourself, I feel like window seat has been great for us. If you do have a child that's busy, I feel like an aisle seat might be great because then once you're takeoff and landing, you could like let them crawl up and down. You can let them walk a bit more. So just knowing like, will my kids sit? How long will they sit for? Is it going to be like a total pain to ask the two people beside me to get up? So I think that is very dependent on you. But like I said, we found that my daughter does really well, like looking out of the window, and she kind of seems to not realize that it's even an option to run up and down the plane if we don't kind of like give her that option.
It's not an
So
option. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's just like her demeanor though. So I think again, knowing your kid. And then one thing I'll say that we did for this last flight that was really great was like reusable sticker boards.
Oh,
I like got brand new ones and I saved them so it was like a fresh activity for her to do. And there was 3 boards, lots of stickers. So she needs help like taking them off, but then I could just give her the sticker she wanted and she could put it down and then they can move them around on the board. And I feel like this was such a good activity for like probably like 18 to 24 month olds. Like she just loved it. It entertained her for so long. And then as your kids get bigger, I just feel like lots of snacks, like snacks are like
snacks.
one of the
Yeah.
best activities. If you can make a snack fun,
As an
then they'll
adult,
like
I
that.
love a snack day as well. So
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
same.
sense.
Like I packed us like our bag of snacks, and there was as many for my husband and I as my daughter. She definitely ate them faster. But even things like, I mean, we generally try to keep snacks as more like whole fruit, things like that. But it's hard depending if you're traveling internationally. You can't really like bring fruit. Bananas get bruised easily, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we'll do things like, oh, we can get, the little puffs that are shapes. And then we can do things like we can take them out and we can count them and then she can eat them like one at a time. So it's like they become more of an activity. So she's like having a snack, but she's like also like, oh, we get to take them out and we like, maybe we make a song about them and then she gets to eat them and then she wants more. So then we do it again. So I feel like doing stuff like that can be really helpful for just kind of occupying time on a
Mm,
plane and
mm,
keeping them kind of entertained and distracted.
mm. Has it been your experience that flight attendants are typically on the helpful side, regardless of who you're flying with, or maybe not?
It's kind of interesting. I feel like flight attendants have never been like not helpful, but I feel like they've never been like particularly helpful. Like I feel
Mm,
like nobody's really offered like extra help to us or anything like that.
yeah,
I don't know if that's a common experience.
yeah, no, I'm not. I mean, in my experience and in those that I've spoken with, they're you maybe helpful is not the right, but they're very willing to be helpful. Like if you need to go to the bathroom, they will happily hold your baby. Or
Mm.
sometimes if you even just need a break and you can ask them to do that. Wouldn't it be nice if they were like half nannies, half flight attendants? Maybe
My
maybe
husband
more
and I
babysitting
have
on
this
this.
theory that they should put like all the small kids in the same area and then give like maybe the third seat or like the extra seat to like a grandma type. Like maybe a
Oh
grandma who's
yeah.
going to see her grandkids. I feel like we've actually had more, and maybe this is like kind of like a Mexican thing because I feel like there's definitely like a Mexican grandma type
Right.
here, but we've had like lots of like older grandma type women who are like, can I hold your baby for a minute? Or like, I'll take her for a
Oh.
second. And so
Yeah,
we're like, "Oh,
yeah,
sure,
okay.
that's fine.
Oh my gosh.
Go
I
ahead."
feel like we could brainstorm, like there could be a whole flight that's just with families and now we just all oh,
Yeah,
that could
the
go
long
either
haul
way.
flights, they need to have
Yeah.
like the playrooms in the back,
Oh,
playroom for your kids. You can just drop your kid off for like 30 minutes and go enjoy like a drink at the bar.
holy smokes. Wow. The future of flying right there.
Yeah,
That'd be
one can
amazing.
hope.
The one can hope. Yeah, especially for yourself as a big traveler. Um can we touch on quickly the road trips? So the big road trip
Mhm.
that you did take when she was quite young. I mean, I know again too as a mother, and well, I'm into the car seats and the sleep and stuff. So you got to get them out of those seats pretty regularly, or at least that's what's recommended too. Did you follow anything specific on that trip, or did you just make sure that you were taking lots of breaks while you were driving?
Yeah. We just planned lots of breaks. And then actually what we did along the way was like even like day long breaks so that she had like a full day out of her car seat just because it's like so for example, the first day we drove, I think the drive itself was 9 hours. I think it took us 12, which is actually pretty good with like a 5-month old and
Mm,
traffic and stuff like that. And then we
mhm,
had 2 nights in Monterey where so a full day, no car seats, no driving. We were in an area where we could just walk, et cetera, et cetera. Then got back on the road. We drove for like 7 hours across the US border. And then we actually had like almost a week in Texas before I flew and my husband did two days of driving. And then we had one night in Bozeman before we had like 8 hours of driving. Um,
wow.
so tried to split it up that way so that she wasn't just like with a big kind of day by day road trip. She wasn't just in her car seat constantly.
Yeah.
But then within the road trip itself, tried to stop every couple of hours. I feel like it's hard to plan, especially when you have, well, any age kid maybe, because you just don't know what their sleep schedule is going to be like. I find my daughter is generally a pretty regular sleeper, but she also sleeps well in her car seat. So sometimes it's like if she's tired, she just goes to sleep. So we tried to
Hmm.
just stop every couple of hours, bathroom breaks, get her out, change her diaper, stretch her. Now that she's walking, of course, we'd let her find a place where she can run around, even if it's
Hmm.
a Starbucks or something. Like if we could find a playground, of course, that's ideal. But just
Hmm.
anywhere where she can stretch her legs and get out is great. And I found when she was littler, it actually was like a little more work for me because I feel like I had to facilitate a little more of the play and entertainment. So I feel like that's where toys were kind of key, like
Yeah.
things that make noise or I can like shake them because it's like she's asleep, she's totally content in her car seat. If she's awake, she's like kind of like get me out.
Yeah, I'm over
Versus
this.
now she's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'll like look at a book for a while or like, a little YouTube video will keep her entertained. Like she's a little more like patient with those types of things, even though she doesn't
Yeah.
sleep as much. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, we didn't follow anything like super strict, like every 2 hours we have to stop because we just kind of wanted to roll with like, if she just fell asleep, we're not going to stop
We're
right
not going to
away, wake
stop
her
now.
up, and then do this whole thing again.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree when my kids were on the younger side, there were more frequent stops, or just the stops were longer. Our typical drive to say going to visit my parents, would be without kids, it's about 6 hours. With kids, at least 6.5, because it's not, again, we're not talking as long as your couple of days of travel. But the
Yeah.
breaks would have to be longer the younger that they were, because it wasn't just, oh, I just need to get out and stretch my legs. It's like I need a mental break from being in the car and just staring in this one location for however many hours.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
So
I
it
feel like when
gets
they're bigger, they
better.
can like eat in the car seat. It's like it's really hard to, I mean, I have done it, but it's like really uncomfortable and it's not super safe to like breastfeed your kid while they're in the car seat. So it's like, if they
Hmm.
need to eat, it's like we want to stop, we want to do like a full feed, make sure she gets like a burp, a diaper change, all that type of stuff. So those stops, I agree, would definitely be longer when she was
Hmm.
a bit littler versus now it's like, she does like the sign for food and it's like I've got a million snacks packed so she can just like have a quick eat.
Yeah.
She's not like she
Yeah.
doesn't have to be on my body for like the whole
Yeah.
time that she wants to eat in order to have her food.
Yeah. Good point though. If it's a long road trip, planning to not try to get there as fast as you can, but actually planning to, like, this is going to be take us a lot longer to get there, but make it an adventure. Plan to stop somewhere for a day or to do that, and just to break up the trip. That's a great tip.
Yeah. Yeah. Even we did a like just a 5.5 hour road trip this summer here in Mexico. And we just stopped to do it's just like a quick hike. I think it took us an hour round trip, but just nice for us all to stretch our legs. My daughter was in the carrier for a good portion of it, but we did give her some time to kind of, run around and stuff. We went to a waterfall, so she got to play a little bit. But just to get us out of the car, and it was right around like the 3 hour mark, which was like perfect. We were able to,
Mm,
have a snack, stretch, spend a little bit of time. So we had just planned that into our day. Like this is how we want to do this day is we want to stop, we want to break up the drive. And then when we drove to Puerto Vallarta, for example, That was almost a year ago now. So she was right at a year. We went there for her 1 year birthday and her first birthday. And we stopped in Guadalajara overnight, which is right in the middle. So it's 9 hours in total. And Guadalajara is about 4 hours from where we live. And we stayed overnight. So again, just kind of thinking like, okay, it's probably going to take us, 5 hours to do this drive. Do we want to do 10 hours in one day? Like that's a long time to have a 1-year-old in the car seat all day. So instead we just stopped and we got to have dinner in a city we love. And the next day we were able to get up, get out early. And then we were at the beach and she was able to play.
Yeah, I love that because, she's just getting that much more experience in just yet another location, and you can have an adventure or just sleep somewhere new and then keep going. That's awesome.
Yeah.
One last question I touched on a little bit, and I'm just curious if you have any particular suggestions around when you're in the new location, as far as close as it may be. Do you have particular items or routines or things that you keep in mind for, well, just keeping things normal routine for her? Any suggestions there?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We try to, even with time changes, just like get her on her normal routine as quick as possible. I feel like it's definitely been easier since she's transitioned just to one nap, because then I know she goes down for her nap at 1. It's just like much easier than like 2,
Oh,
3 to
there's
4
2,
nap
3.
schedules
Yeah.
where it's like,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
your
where
whole
it's like
day.
we're
Yeah.
just, yeah, we're just calculating naps all day. So I will fully acknowledge that. But I feel like just trying to get them on their routine as quick as possible. One thing we found as she's gotten bigger, which a friend actually gave me this tip from traveling with her daughter. It was so helpful, is like when you get to a space, give them some time to like orient to the space. So like kind of tour them around even while they're little, walk them like, this is the kitchen. This is where we're going to eat our meals here. This is the bed. This is where we're going to sleep. Show them where they're going to sleep. And we travel with a travel crib with her. We have the Baby Bjorn travel crib, which is great because it's kind of like a large briefcase, and it fits perfectly in one side of our like biggest suitcase. We have a big suitcase that's made by Away, fits perfectly in that, and then the other side, because it's such a big suitcase, is perfect for me to pack my stuff as well as Lou's stuff, and then my husband takes like a separate suitcase with his stuff. We found that's really nice because then she's got her sheet from home. It smells like home. It's normal. Like she knows her crib. It's like, so even if she's distracted by all the things in the room or in the new space, generally having her crib is like this kind of anchor to like, okay, I know it's sleep time. I know it's nap time. I know this is where I sleep. It's comfortable for her. But we just try to do her regular routine. Like I'll bring the books, whatever books we're reading at the time. We do like 2 books before sleep time normally. We have a noise machine for her. So I just bring all that stuff and try to just get her into a routine. I have found if we like check into a place and I'm immediately trying to get her to sleep, that's when I have the least success. Like she definitely needs a minute to orientate, explore, look at all the things that are new. So we usually just try to give her a minute to like just explain the space to her. And I feel like that's been so helpful. Sometimes she needs a little bit more support with sleep, especially like maybe the first nap or the first nighttime in a new place. But I found after that, she's usually pretty good, especially since we have the travel crib. So she's not sleeping in like a foreign space. Basically, she sleeps in the same space that she gets to sleep at home.
That's exactly the kind of thing I suggest, is how many sames can you bring to the situation, because she's in a different space, there's a different city, country, whatever. So the routines, the items, if you can't actually bring a travel crib or have something that they're going to sleep in the pack and play, they can still get used to those things when they're in a new place. Like I don't think, well, does she sleep in this same crib at home where you are, or is this the crib that you bring to new places?
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been, I'll just tell you the short form of this. So, we didn't bring it to Japan because we were going to be sleeping on the floor a lot. She wasn't walking yet. She walked shortly after we got back from that trip. She got really used to sleeping with us, either in the bed with us or like on the mats that they have on the floor, which is like actually the best sleeping setup with like a kid that age, because they can't roll off the bed.
Yeah.
It's like so great. She could just like crawl when she wanted to.
Yeah.
But then when we got back, she had like she was in a pack and play before. That was like, we had the pack and play, started her in the bassinet, moved her into the one level, and then she was on the lowest level of it. So we've never had like a traditional crib. We've had a pack and play. She refused to sleep in it. Absolutely refused, and then would only sleep in our bed. But she, we have a normal bed at home. So
This is
I
when
was
you
just
got
feeling a
back
bit
from
uncomfortable.
Japan.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
when we get back to Mexico. I was feeling a bit uncomfortable because she was trying to get off the bed by herself. We had one incident where she did fall. She was completely fine, but I was just like, this is not, I don't feel comfortable with this. Like naps were stressing me out, even with the monitor and stuff like that. And also just like, she was getting a bit big for us personally to co-sleep. I was just feeling like none of us were sleeping the best that we could. We
Mm-hmm.
had a trip upcoming to Canada. And so we just had a couple of challenging going to beds as we worked her into her travel crib. The first few nights she cried and cried and cried just for like 5 minutes. But I just sat there with her. I held her. I said, I understand that you're frustrated. I know you want to sleep in the bed, but this is where you sleep now. I'll hold you till you're done crying. Just held her. The first 2 nights she fell asleep standing up after her tears stopped. And I just gently put her down. She was fine after that. The third night she just went to sleep in the travel crib. So we had like a couple hard moments with it. But then since the pack and play had been such like she was revolting it, we've just kept her in her travel crib, which I don't know if that's weird or not, but it's like she's a good size for it. She can't get out of it. She can't fall. She loves it. We are
Sounds
about to
good.
transition her into a Montessori bed, so we'll see how that goes. That'll be a whole thing.
Oh,
Maybe you have
okay.
resources on that for me.
I actually do, and then we'll have you back to do a part 2 when she's older, because I'd love
Yeah.
to hear about that. But no, those are all good points to make, and that again, as a sleep consultant, that's typically where the questions to me lie, is like, okay, when they're sleeping in this new space, how do we make this just as comfortable? And just like you were saying, the sheet, the sleep sack, the sound machine, like whatever that is that they use and have for sleep, bring all of those things. Spending time in the space before, I'd even say like that I try to include that in travel time. Basically, you don't want to just arrive at your destination when it's bedtime, because you're either meeting up with grandma and grandpa, or you're just in a new space and they're not going to fall asleep right away, and it might be a bit of a struggle. So hanging out in the room when it's not like the room that you want them to sleep in, when it's not sleep time, getting them a little bit accustomed to that. But then it comes down to, they always look to us for what are the things that we're doing, so they figure out what's happening next. So if your routines and you still have the same books and you still do all of that the same, that actually brings them so much comfort and can allow for a different scenario to happen while you're away.
Yeah.
And worst case
100%.
scenario, you get back home and now we're in our new, like, this is where we do home stuff. So we can go back to whatever it was we were doing here, if anything changed while you're away.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. All that stuff is key. Like I just feel like, yeah, having their sleep sack, having their lovey if they have one, or a stuffed animal they sleep with, like having their pacifier if they use one, having their books, like having their noise machine. I feel like that's always worked really well for us. And then just being, I think, really like, I think for us, it's like we kind of forget that it's uncomfortable because we've done this so much. And maybe some people feel different about this. Like maybe sleeping in a hotel is really uncomfortable for some adults, but we know how to regulate, right? It's like we understand, we can rationalize. But I feel like just being really like compassionate and empathetic to your little one in terms of like, if they need more milk, or if they need more snuggles, or if they need a back rub, or maybe if they need to like sleep with you for part of the first night because it's uncomfortable for them. Like just, I feel like I just try to be like really gentle with her and really like compassionate that she still is, even though she seems so big to me now because she's grown so much. It's like she is still
a
so
kid.
little, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, she's still tiny.
Yeah, that makes sense. It really, it's having that empathy, like you said, of understanding that things may not go perfectly. Things may go completely sideways, but they're not doing any of that on purpose. And if you do have to resort, if they were independently sleeping before, but now they need you more, or they get your help with going to sleep, I think it's very much, those are the times when you should do that. It will help regulate them. You will all enjoy the experience that much more. And you can always go back to what things were like at home when you get back home. We don't have to keep
For
everything
sure.
exactly if it's not working for people. I
Yeah,
feel like I could
absolutely.
continue to talk to you because more questions. There's always more to talk about when it comes to travel. But maybe we can direct people to where to find you to find out more about this. So I know you have a couple of podcasts, but one specifically about the travel. Anyway, just share with us where we can all find you on the old internet in case we want more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So if you're interested in travel, which I'm kind of assuming you are if you're here listening to this, my husband and I, like I said, co-host a podcast called The World Wanders. So you can find it on any platform that you're listening to this podcast, or go to theworldwanders.com and you can find all of our episodes there. Especially over this last year, like I said, we've traveled a ton with our daughter. So we've done a lot of like how we prepared for flights, what travel's been like, and a lot of that stuff touches on, of course, the places we are, but also just what it's been like traveling with a child over this last year and at the different stages that we've traveled with her. So lots of resources there.
Mm.
And then if you're a yoga teacher interested in yoga, you can go to mbomyoga.com, and that's where you can find more about me. And yeah, I'm just Amanda Kingsmith on social media.
Beautiful. I'm going to link to all of that in our show notes, so we'll make it easy for people to find you. Thanks so much, Amanda, again, for doing this and at least giving us a really good foundation introduction to the traveling with little ones. I know you've probably got more detail and more specific stories and stuff on your podcast, so hopefully people go check that out for more. Thanks so much for this.
Yeah,
I appreciate
awesome.
it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation.
If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. You can now join our Bringing Up Baby community membership as well, which has tons of additional benefits to helping you through all kinds of sleep challenges and transitions, navigating the transition to solid foods, and even your transition through early parenthood. If you have any questions, just send them my way. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.